that running down the sea coasts, being melted by the sun, it congeals in the water in great heaps, like small islands. This pitch is not like that of Europe, but resembles, both in color and shape, the froth of the sea called bitumen. But in my judgment, this matter is nothing but wax mixed with sand, which stormy weather and the rolling waves of great rivers hath cast into the sea. For in those parts are great quantities of bees, who make their honey in trees, to the bodies of which the honeycomb being fixed, when tempests arise, they are torn away, and by the fury of the winds carried into the sea, as is said. Some naturalists say that the honey and the wax are separated by the salt water, whence proceeds the good amber. This opinion seems the more probable, because the said amber tastes as wax doth. But to return to my discourse. The pirates made in those islands all the haste they possibly could to equip their vessels, hearing that the Spanish ship was come which they expected. They spent some time cruising on the coasts of Yucatan, where inhabit many Indians, who seek for the said amber in those seas. And I shall here, by the by, make some short remarks on the manner of living of the Indians, and their religion. They have now been above 100 years under the Spaniards, to whom they performed all manners of services. For whensoever any of them needed a slave or servant, they sent for these to serve them as long as they pleased. By the Spaniards they were initiated in the principles of the Christian faith and religion, and they sent them every Sunday and holiday a priest to perform divine service among them. Afterwards, for reasons not known, but certainly through temptations of the father of idolatry, the devil, they suddenly cast off the Christian religion, abusing the priest that was sent them. This provoked the Spaniards to punish them, by casting many of the chiefs into prison. Every one of those barbarians had, and hath still, a god to himself, whom he serves and worships. It is a matter of admiration how they use a child newly born. As soon as it comes into the world, they carry it to the temple. Here they make a hole, which they fill with ashes only, on which they place the child naked, leaving it there a whole night alone, not without great danger, nobody daring to come near it. Meanwhile the temple is open on all sides, that all sorts of beasts may freely come in and out. Next day the father and relations of the infant return to see if the track or step of any animal appears in the ashes. Not finding any, they leave the child there till some beast has approached the infant, and left behind him the marks of his feet. To this animal, whatsoever it be, they consecrate the creature newly born, as to its god, which he is bound to worship all his life, esteeming the said beast his patron and protector. They offer to their gods sacrifices of fire, wherein they burn a certain gum called by them copal, whose smoke smells very deliciously. When the infant is grown up, the parents thereof tell him who he ought to worship and serve, and honor as his own proper god. Then he goes to the temple, where he makes offerings to the said beast. Afterwards, if in the course of his life any one injure him, or any evil happens to him, he complains to that beast, and sacrifices to it for revenge. Hence it often comes that those who have done the injury of which he complains are bitten, killed, or otherwise hurt by such animals. After this superstitious and idolatrous manner live those miserable and ignorant Indians that inhabit the islands of this Gulf of Honduras, as also many of them on the continent of Yucatan, in the territories whereof are most excellent ports, where those Indians most commonly build their houses. These people are not very faithful to one another, and use strange ceremonies at their marriages. Whensoever any one pretends to marry a young damsel, he first applies himself to her father or nearest relation. He examines him nicely about the manner of cultivating their plantations, and other things at his pleasure. Having satisfied the questions of his father-in-law, he gives the young man a bow and arrow, with which he repairs to the young maid, and presents her with a garland of green leaves and sweet-smelling flowers. This she is obliged to put on her head, and lay aside that which she wore before, it being the custom for virgins to go perpetually crowned with flowers. This garland being received and put on her head, every one of the relations and friends go to advise with others whether the marriage will be happy or not. Then they meet at the house of the damsel's father, where they drink of a liquor made of maize, or Indian wheat. And here before the whole company the father gives his daughter in marriage to the bridegroom. Next day the bride comes to her mother, and in her presence pulls off the garland, and tears it in pieces with great cries and lamentations. Many other things I could relate of the manner of living and customs of those Indians, but I shall follow my discourse. End of Chapter 8, Part 1. Recording by Acacia Wood.